What's up guys, it's me Jeremy. Recently, a Reddit user by the name of Manatee Power posted an Easter egg revolving Jhin and Kindred on Reddit the other day that honestly just totally blew my mind. And it's super interesting and really cool, and I gotta give him big props because he said he was actually inspired by my What Kindred Could Have Been video. And when I saw this post, I gotta admit, it honestly just made me so happy, because this is exactly why I make videos like that. This kind of awesome stuff that comes out of the What Could Have Been series, it's just so satisfying to see that I could inspire someone to do this. So again, big shout out to Manatee Power on Reddit, you're a beast dude. And with his permission, I wanted to examine his theory a little bit and dive deep into the details on this one, because it is quite peculiar. Let's get started. So this concept starts with the lore of Kindred. Kindred as a character is one that is incredibly mysterious, and there's a lot of questions surrounding their backstory. In Kindred's Q&A, a writer described Kindred as what is essentially the personification of the real legend, or like the myth, of death. Which is interesting because it means that in the lore, Kindred might be real or they might actually not be, and it's probably a little bit of both, and what we play in the game is just really a legend brought to life. And that legend of Kindred began in an interesting way. During the death screen when you play as Kindred, Lamb tells a story to Wolf, and we the audience get to listen in. This is the story of how Kindred came to be.
Lamb, tell me a story.
There was once a pale man with dark hair who was very lonely.
Why was it lonely?
All things must meet this man, so they shunned him.
Did he chase them all?
He took an axe and split himself in two, right down the middle.
So he would always have a friend.
So he would always have a friend.
Kindred is the result of someone splitting into two separate beings, and who that person may have been before was described as being a pale man with dark hair, and that man may have been the cyborg bounty hunter. The cyborg bounty hunter from the story of Kindred's development was a pale man with dark hair who was both literally scrapped and replaced with Lamb and Wolf, and now we're finding out in this theory could have been so spiritually as well. So depending on how you look at it, Lamb is breaking the fourth wall, and that story of the pale man with dark hair is actually the literal story of what happened during her development. And at the same time, she's also talking about her lore and the character of who Kindred was before they became Kindred, which we know outside of the lore was definitely the cyborg bounty hunter, and it's not unlikely that in the lore the character was the cyborg bounty hunter as well. The cyborg bounty hunter went on to become High Noon Jhin, and this is where we start to see a serious connection between Kindred and Jhin together. That story may not represent the cyborg bounty hunter, in fact it was actually quite likely that it does represent Jhin. There's a ton of quotes from the in-game dialogue of both Kindred and Jhin that make it quite clear that there's a connection between the two.
Beauty fades. That is why it is beautiful.
Symmetry is so boring. The end is important in all things.
All your life has led to this moment.
Your life had no value before me.
Those who dread us grant us the most power.
Art should terrify.
Tomorrow is a hope, never a promise.
They're gonna live until they die.
And one of the more notable relations between the in-game quotes occur when the individual champions use their ultimates.
Your final scene begins.
Savor life's closing act.
And there's also a few more in-game quotes that establish a connection.
I wonder what they think when they see me.
I wonder how they see me.
Ashes on war.
How one dies shows how one lived.
Life has no meaning, but your death shall. There is no drama in a peaceful death.
Go easily.
No, Thrash, flee!
Their path is destined to cross ours.
I couldn't miss your performance.
And a couple more quotes that relate as well. First off, we have,
You only understand harmony. Discord is required for contrast.
harmony represents Lamb, while discord represents Wolf. And as well, there's another quote too.
Face the crowd and bleed for them.
This quote is very much a reference to Kindred's extended lore titled A Good Death. where in that story, Kindred attends a play, and in that play, Kindred kills one of the actors, and that actor quite literally faces the crowd and then dies in front of them as a part of the performance. As well, in that story, the play is actually a play about the story of Kindred, and in that play there's a single actor that plays all of Kindred, who wears 2 masks. Jhin is also a character who wears 2 masks, and has another in-game quote mentioning that.
Behind every mask is another mask.
And if that wasn't enough to convince you, we have the final nail in the coffin, where Kindred and Jhin actually hum the same tune in-game. Let's take a listen in. With all of those things combined, I have to admit that those relations are not only convincing, but really creepy as well. And we have to remember that Bard's lore shows that time travel in the League of Legends universe is possible. And as such, it's definitely not impossible in this universe for Kindred to be what is essentially Jhin who has died, transformed himself into Kindred, and then returns to the present as an omnipotent being from the future. And if Bard can time travel, it's reasonable that the embodiment of death himself can also time travel. So whether or not it's true that Kindred used to be Jhin, or maybe that this is just an Easter egg alluding to the development of Kindred, it's not entirely clear, but there's a lot of evidence that points towards Kindred being Jhin in a past life. I personally am honestly really convinced, and I see this theory as being pretty dang legit, and it's really clever of Riot to fit in something like this where the backstory of Kindred is essentially based on the story of her character design that brought her to life. So that's about it as far as I'm aware in terms of evidence for this theory, but it's possible that there's more things, or just more details or connections that add up together. Overall, it's a pretty interesting thing to think about, and it's a pretty awesome design aspect that alludes to Kindred's development cycle. So what do you think? Is this theory legit, or is it maybe just a bit too optimistic? As well, if you have any more info on this theory, definitely share them in the comments, and once again, a shout out goes to Manatee Power on Reddit for compiling this information and being kind enough to let me make a video about it. If you guys enjoyed the video, hit that like button, and if you didn't hit that dislike, subscribe if you want. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.